a sincere attitude that encourages learning as well as positive interactions in multiple directions. Complete knowledge in the subjects that are taught. Teaching methods and techniques that allow students to carry out their learning activities by using appropriate methods and techniques. As educators of the new generation, teachers must know the aspects of psychology, especially that of human development. With this knowledge, teachers can plan, deliver and assess their teaching in an effective way. In addition, they can carry out their responsibilities as parent substitutes, which include giving their views, advice, and guidance in aspects regarding student behavior and their personal matters.
The definition of psychology.
What do you understand about psychology? The word psychology came from the word psyche and logos, which originated from ancient Greek civilization. Psyche means soul and logos means the study of something. Therefore, psychology means the study of something that affects the soul. According to the Oxford Dictionary, psychology is defined as the scientific study of the mind and how it influences behavior. From the definition above, it can be concluded that the study of something that is meant by the word logos is the study of thinking that influences the character and behavior of organisms.
Other definitions of psychology that support the definition above are:
the scientific study of the way the human mind works and how it influences behavior, or the influence of the particular person's character on their behavior. Cambridge International Dictionary of English. Psychology may be defined as the systematic study of behavior and mental life. Henry L. Rediger and colleagues. Callatt, 1984, defines psychology as the scientific study of human behavior and experience, whereas Williams defines it as a branch of scientific study that examines behavior and activities. Whitaker, in his book Introduction to Psychology, stated that psychology is the science of behavior. Therefore, psychology is the scientific study of the human soul and spirit.
The historical development of psychology.
The origins of the word psychology indicate that the field of psychology has a long history that dates back to ancient Greek civilization. The study of psychology was developed between the year 384 BC to 322 BC by Greek scholars such as Socrates, Plato and Aristotle. During the time, psychology was part of the study of philosophy rather than a scientific study of its own. After the period of early Greek civilization, the history of psychology can be grouped according to the understanding and perspectives of several prominent psychologists.
Definition of educational psychology.
Educational psychology concerned with human maturation, school learning, teaching methods, guidance, and evaluation of aptitude and progress by standardized tests. Education as an objective science was strongly promoted around 1900 by Alfred Binet and Edward Thorndike. Binet was who invented the first intelligence tests, and they were extended and promoted in English by Louis Terman.
Binet's ideas were sympathetic to Thorndike, who was above all interested in turning psychology into a real science by research, measurement and empirical evidence.
The arrival of World War I caused a huge conscription of men into the fighting services. Sorting out men of all types was an urgent problem. The intelligence tests proved to be very useful at helping get the right men into the right jobs. Not surprisingly, the use of IQ tests continued in education, where a similar problem of sorting out occurs in unselected public school enrollments.
Definition of educational psychology.
Educational psychology concerned with human maturation, school learning, teaching methods, guidance, and evaluation of aptitude and progress by standardized tests. These include the behaviorism, psychoanalytic, humanistic and biological approaches. The behaviorism approach stated that psychologists do not have to consider mental events, conscious and unconscious, and that they should instead focus on behavior that is overt and non-overt. Watson, a behaviorist, stated that all aspects relating to a person's behavior are influenced by the environment rather than by internal factors. Watson's ideas have contributed to the behaviorism approach that stresses on the idea that behavior and mental processes are consequences of learning. Bessine and others. According to this approach, behavior is a series of responses that happens when there are stimuli. This approach is also known as stimulus-response psychology. In addition to Watson, other behaviorism psychologists were Ivan Pavlov, B.F. Skinner and D.L. Thorndike. Pavlov was credited for the concept of classic conditioning, where he did an experiment on a dog to show the relationship between stimulus, food, and response, saliva. The psychoanalytic approach.
The psychoanalytic approach was based on the belief that human behavior is influenced by unconscious psychological processes which we are not aware of. In other words, our behavior is based on internal conflicts, impulses, desires and motives which we are not aware of. This approach assumes that all behavior, normal and abnormal, is the result of the interaction between genetic and environmental factors. Both factors affect behavior by influencing the conscious and unconscious psychological processes. Psychoanalytic theorists stress on the importance of an individual's early stages of development, and they believe that events happening during childhood have a lasting effect on the psychology of the individual.
Sigmund Freud, 1856 to 1939, is the most well-known psychoanalytic theorist.
His ideas have continued to influence other psychoanalytic theorists. His theory of personality structure divided the psychic structure into three categories: id, ego and superego. Freud believed that each of these entities were responsible for each set of psychological operation. The id is the source of motivation and desire that are inherited, primitive, self-centered, and does not have the influence of the real world. The id is dominant at the early months of a baby's life, when motivation and wants strongly influence a baby's behavior. It is seen as the first psychic element that influences behavior.
Ego.
The ego is responsible for and controls motivation and primitive urges so that they follow more closely the situational requirements. The ego slowly takes the responsibility to turn the primitive motivation of the id to follow the moral requirements and ethical standards of the community. The ego's operation is guided by the principles of reality and not by the principles of pleasure that influences the id. The principles of reality acknowledge the realistic requirements of the community.
Superego.
As children grow, the role of the ego expands. It has to deal with the superego, which is the early source of conscience and which is our ability to differentiate between the right and wrong. The superego appears slowly when children learn the rules that are used by their parents to interpret the expectations of the community. Parents have an important role in the development of conscience in children until they can construct their own set of internal standards. Children who were brought up by their parents in an abusive way will become critical, punishing and penalizing. This behavior can become excessive. In such cases, the superego might become so inflexible and strict that it limits or prevents itself from enjoying normal pleasures that are supposed to be experienced during childhood. Children with punitive superegos during adolescence might face problems in fulfilling the superego's requirements. As an example, when they reach puberty, they will have problems controlling their increasing sexual needs. Freud believes that anxiety and depression are usually associated with an excessive demand from the superego. In the psychoanalytic approach, the id, the ego and the superego usually have different goals and methods. If the id and superego become strong enough to empower the ego, this will result in an internal conflict within the individual. According to Freud's theory, if this conflict is unresolved, it can lead to mental confusion. Psychoanalysis uses the developmental approach in understanding abnormalities. It claims that events during childhood have an impact on an individual's adult life. Freud believes that children go through different levels of psychosexuality at different stages. At each stage, there is a part of the body that provides satisfaction to the sexual needs. Children going through the anal, oral, latency and genital stages in a satisfactory way will become a normal adult. If there is disappointment or excesses at any level, a fixation will exist at the particular level that will influence the individual's characteristics in his adult life. For instance, a person who eats excessively at the oral level might experience fixation at that level and might become obese or addicted to drugs as a grown-up. This approach has contributed significantly in helping to understand human personality development. The views about the influence of the id, ego and superego from childhood on an individual's personality development have initiated a great deal of research in this area. These views have also influenced other disciplines such as English literature and history.
The cognitivism approach.
This approach was pioneered by Gestalt psychologists such as P.J. Vygotsky, Gainey, Brunner and Ausubel. The cognitive approach focuses on the process of human thinking such as perception and assumption, cognition, metacognition, critical and creative thinking, learning skills, and motivation. Cognitive psychologists try to understand the processes involved and how they operate. These psychologists believe that the internal events that happen within an individual must be studied if his behavior in total were to be understood. This approach differs from the psychoanalysis approach that focuses on unconscious thought and the behaviorist approach that focuses on environmental factors and behavior.
The humanistic approach.
This approach stated that the humans are free and good individuals with the potential to develop and with targets to achieve. Humans are motivated to act because they have desires and needs. According to this approach, humans are always active and do not wait to be acted upon. The study of psychology is to help humans to maximize their potential for their psychological development. A few prominent psychologists within this approach are Abraham Maslow, Rollo May, Carl Rogers and Gordon Allport. Abraham Maslow, 1970, introduced the theory of the hierarchy of needs. The assumptions underlying this theory are based on the belief that humans are never satisfied with what they have achieved. According to Maslow, human needs can be grouped into 5 levels of hierarchy, which range from the low-level needs, basic needs, to the high-level needs, psychological needs. Humans will actively move upwards from one level to the other after the needs of each level are met. Rogers, 1956, stated that humans are always working to understand themselves and to influence and control their own behavior and those of others. He believes that basically all humans are good and that they are all born with the tendency to seek perfection, which forms the motive that drives them to develop as mature and healthy human beings. In conclusion, the humanistic approach focuses on the desires of an individual and the uniqueness of humans, as well as their freedom to choose their own goals in life. Psychology has the role of helping humans to develop their potential to the maximum. Look at the figure based on your own life experience. Give an example for each level of hierarchy. Which level are you at now?
The biological approach.
This approach is also known as the biomedical approach and the disease model or medical model. This approach is based on the assumption that humans are physical systems and must be understood from a physical angle. Among the things that have to be understood are the physiological condition and nervous system of the individual. According to this point of view, the problems that we experienced are a result of physical disability, injury or diseases that affect the brain. 2 German physiologists, Edward Itzig, 1893–1927, and Gustav Rich, 1839–1907, carried out an experiment on a dog which involved inserting 2 strands of wire in the cortical surface of the dog's brain. Through this experiment, they found that the structure of the brain where the spinal cords originate is closely related to the individual's behavior. In other words, the brain will respond to an electrical stimulus that is directly given, and this affects the behavior of an individual. Therefore, an area of focus within the biological approach is the role of the central nervous system that is responsible for controlling the thoughts and movements of humans. Every approach has its strengths and weaknesses. However, each of these approaches has contributed toward many areas of research, such as research on drug abuse, computer and human interaction, genius and problematic children, and many more.
Defining educational psychology.
The fields of psychology and education are closely related. The field of educational psychology combines the field of psychology with that of education. As you have learned, psychology is the scientific study of the thought and behavior of an individual or group of individuals, whereas education is the process of developing the potential and skills of an individual in a specific area. According to Banks and Thompson, 1995, psychology is the study of human behavior. Education is a profession that studies and constructs methodologies and approaches for teaching and learning that can be used in schools. Educational psychology is the study of human action and behavior in the process of teaching and learning in the classroom. The study of educational psychology includes the study of human development, learning, memory, motivation, classroom management, and testing and assessment of learning. Boric and Tombari, 1997, stated that educational psychology is a discipline that focuses on the theoretical and empirical knowledge about teaching and learning in the classroom. Clifford, 1984, and Henson and Eller, 1999, defines educational psychology as applying the methods of psychology to studying the process of education, whereas Gronder, 1981, defines it as the application of psychological knowledge to classroom situations. The job of educational psychologists is to apply the principles of psychology to education, and throughout their career, to examine the learner, the process of learning, and the strategies of learning in order to improve learning. In conclusion, educational psychology is very useful for teachers in order to understand student behavior and to ease the process of teaching and learning.
Purposes of educational psychology.
The goal of educational psychology is to understand, describe and explain learner behavior in the process of teaching and learning, as well as to predict the possible replacement behavior and how to control such behavior. As an example, by referring to the different ways of solving student problems as described in the following paragraph, behavior can be controlled where negative behavior can be replaced with positive behavior by encouraging the student to do activities which are beneficial to them. The aim of psychology focuses on 4 goals: to describe, to explain, to control, and to predict an action. When a negative behavior is found, for instance, smoking among teenagers, psychologists will try to describe this behavior. Usually these will include actions such as sneaking off somewhere to smoke. They will smoke in the toilet, shopping complexes, or abandoned houses. Following this description, the psychologists will attempt to explain the causes that led to the teenagers' actions. After explaining the reasons for these actions, they will suggest ways to control these actions and predict replacement actions to replace the negative ones. For example, healthy activities such as playing badminton or jogging in the evenings are predicted as having the ability to stop the smoking habit among the teenagers.
The importance of educational psychology for teachers.
What is the importance of psychology to teachers and students? There are several reasons why it is important for teachers to understand and practice educational psychology, such as: it enables teachers to understand why a student behaves in one way or another, to help students to understand themselves, to help teachers plan appropriate learning objectives and goals for their students, and to plan the appropriate steps toward the achievement of these learning objectives and goals. Teachers can predict the students' behavior and their likes and dislikes at different age levels. This knowledge can help teachers plan appropriate reinforcement for the students in their effort to control the students' behavior and to motivate them to study. Through the examination of human growth and development, teachers will be able to know about the students' stages of physical, cognitive, social, and emotional development. Therefore, teachers will be able to plan teaching and learning according to the students' stages of development. Teachers can design a simple investigation to identify their students' stages of development, especially for problematic students. Once the stages of development have been identified, the teacher can prepare appropriate programs or activities for these students in order to improve their learning. Teachers can also carry out research on educational issues such as problems of discipline in the classroom, truancy, smoking and so forth. Data and information gained from the research can help the teacher to help the students to solve their problems and to improve the quality of education and learning. Educational psychology will be able to assist teachers in understanding the students' personalities and concept of self. This will enable the teacher to help the students toward developing a positive concept of self. To conclude, teachers should be equipped with knowledge of educational psychology because their responsibilities do not include only the delivery of knowledge, but the creation of an individual who is complete with good characteristics and who is responsible toward family, nationality and religion. This chapter provided an introduction to the field of psychology. Psychology is defined as a branch of scientific study that focuses on the mental life and behavior of humans and animals. There are 9 historical developments of psychology. They are interactionism, empiricism, structuralism, functionalism, behaviorism, Gestalt psychology, humanistic, cognitivism, and constructivism. 5 important approaches in psychology are behaviorism, psychoanalytic, cognitivism, humanistic and biological. The importance of psychology to educationists was also discussed.